computer. Shabbat Shalom and welcome back. It feels like it's been a long time. So let's begin with the blessing for studying Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Doesn't fade out.
So this is about being blessed with the possibility of plunging ourselves into.
I don't know why. Because you were using mine.
Okay, gotta mute somebody here. So it is about plunging ourselves in the words of Torah. Plunging because there are so many levels and layers of interpretation. This is always wonderful. Okay, so just to catch us up, does anybody remember where we are? I mean, I do have it marked here, but anybody know what happened last time we met? Which king are we talking about right now?
Solomon.
Solomon, yes, Solomon. And right at the moment, so far anyway, he seems like a pretty wonderful king, right? He's almost as good as his father David. Somehow David has been cleaned up for us.
If that isn't a faint praise.
Yeah.
Excuse me, where are we?
I'm going to share the screen. You don't have to, Okay. Yeah.
11,
I was just trying to, yeah, we're at 11, but I just wanted to catch us up in terms of like, where are we? King Solomon, who apparently is a wise man, right? Remember the Queen of Sheba came just to hear his wisdom. And, he seems to have a bunch of wives, which politically is not a bad thing. Make alliances by having wives. And he's got lots of horses. So we're maybe getting a hint that maybe there's some things that aren't quite right? I mean, remember in Deuteronomy, we're told you don't want the guy to have too many horses. He shouldn't go back to Egypt to get them. He shouldn't have too many wives. Actually, what it says here in the in this Reuben edition that page 4. Where do I see this? He's supposed to have like only up to 18. I don't remember where I saw this. Anyway, it'll come up while we read. Yeah. So he, so far so good, but these things don't last too long. All right, so we are going to begin at 11, chapter 11. I'm going to share my screen so we can look at this together. And if you want to follow it along in your own book, that's fine too. And if you see an interesting difference in how it's translated, you might want to point it out, because that's always, fertile interpretive material. So let's begin. I'm sorry?
I said, just remember the saying in Latin America that translation is treason.
That's great. Okay, so who would like to start reading?
I will.
Okay, thank you. Lori.
King Solomon loved many foreign women along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women from the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the Israelites, you shall not enter into marriage with them, neither shall they with you, for they will surely incline your heart to follow their gods. Solomon clung to these in love. Among his wives, 700 princesses and 300 concubines. And
he was busy.
Yeah, really. That's less than once a year. Okay.
Hey,
and
how many
his
times a day?
wives turned away his heart. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not true to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. For Solomon followed Astarte, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. So Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and did not completely follow the Lord as his father David had done. Then Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and for Molech, the abomination of the Ammonites on the mountain east of Jerusalem. He did the same for all his foreign wives who offered incense and sacrificed to their gods.
Thank you. Let's stop here for a moment. So obviously things are changing now. What's the reason for Solomon, disobeying God?
Well, he wanted to make his wives happy.
Right,
yeah.
right. So, it's their fault, right? Okay, I just wanted to point that out. So it wasn't that he himself strayed, it was these women. Somebody's got some kind of sound coming out of there. I don't know who it is. Okay, it's done. All right, so I want to read you, this is the sort of more traditional commentary, not modern commentary. So of course, they're not going to, dump on Solomon, right? They're going to find some reason for what's going on here. So it says, the sages use this passage as a prime example of the wisdom of the Torah. King Solomon, one of the greatest of all Jews and the wisest of all men, violated these prohibitions on the king's prerogatives, right? Remember, he can have horses and, various other things, but only to a certain extent. He was confident that his superior wisdom would protect him from the pitfalls specified by the verses in the Torah. What does that tell you? Power gets to people's head, right?
Say that again.
Okay. He said he was confident that his superior wisdom would protect him from the pitfalls specified by the Torah. In other words, I'm so wise, I'm not going to allow myself to be, led astray. So, that's sort of power getting to your head. Like, I am above the law, right? We've seen this, right? Okay, with a few of our presidents. I can't be prosecuted because I'm so, powerful and smart, or, it doesn't matter because whatever happens when power gets to your head and you think you're above it all, either that you'll be protected by the power of the office, or that you will, that you're entitled because you're this important person, right? So, you have to read between the lines here for that, because, they're just saying it was his wisdom, not that power got to his head. But anyway, but he erred. His large stables did bring the people back to Egypt. That was one thing you weren't supposed to do. His many wives did affect him, and his large treasury was a corrupting influence. Remember all the money that he taxed people by. And the heavy taxes it necessitated caused the nation to be split after his death, which is something we're going to see. And what is really interesting about the whole story about the two kingdoms, I don't know if we'll get to it today or not, but the kingdom split to Judah and Israel. But there was always a conflict between the south and the north, right? Even before all this, Saul is from the north and David is from the south, and there was already a conflict then. And even though the kingdoms were united for a certain amount of time, there was always that underlying tension. Hello, United States of America, right? We had a civil war. Did we ever really resolve it? No. We're still, unfortunately, still and back, right? So it's interesting that these underlying issues, even if they look like they've been resolved, if they haven't been resolved properly, they keep coming back. Okay, then they say, it remains to be understood, however, how someone as great as Solomon could take it upon himself to transgress specific prohibitions in the Torah. One commentator, based on Kabbalistic sources, explains that Solomon believed that he was living in messianic times. So this is one way of giving the guy a great excuse. Oh, he thought he was in the messianic times. We're not in ordinary times, so transgressions don't mean the same thing. The nation was united as never before. His intellectual and moral superiority was acknowledged even by the surrounding Gentile nations. He had unprecedented wealth. There was no famine, war, jealousy, or acrimonious competition. There was general prosperity and abundance. Now, even though we may not have believed that we ever lived in messianic times, I mean, there are times when we felt like everything was just fine, right? And just ignored all the stuff underneath that got flushed out in the last few years, right? All these are given by the Talmud and Rambam, which is Maimonides, as the conditions of messianic times. If there's no war and there's wealth and there's this and this, we must be living under the Messiah, which of course would probably mean that Solomon is the Messiah. Hello. Accordingly, Solomon felt that God had given him all these blessings in order to prepare the world for its ultimate perfection. The Torah says explicitly that excessive horses, wealth, and wives are forbidden because they could sway mere mortals. But Solomon was not a mere mortal. God had given him superhuman wisdom so he could overcome normal temptation and thereby become the ultimate Messiah. Delusions of grandeur. Now, I think the way the classic sources are interpreting this, they're not necessarily criticizing him. They're saying, he thought he was in messianic time, so give him a pass on this. But I think we can also read it as what happens when you get a lot of power and it goes to your head. You think you are immune, you think you're above the law, you think you're great, whatever it is. Again, we have seen many examples of this. He took hundreds of wives not to satisfy his passions. For that, he need not have gone beyond the borders of his own country and its people, right? He didn't need to have foreign wives if it was just about sex. He wanted to bring love of God to all the nations. That's a cute interpretation. The only reason he married all these other women was because he wanted to bring them Judaism. What a nice guy. And in the terminology of Kabbalah, he wanted to draw forth the sparks of holiness that lay dormant in the nations. In other words, there's some who believe that the reason we are in the diaspora or in exile is so that we can gather the sparks of divinity that are scattered everywhere around us. And once we do that, we can all return to Israel and we can, move on to the world to come. So he was being very generous by marrying all these women, and offering to redeem all of them. To bring this about, Solomon would marry the daughters of powerful kings and thereby be able to bring about the messianic age by influencing them and their people to forsake idolatry and accept Hashem as the one and only God. Now, obviously, he did not succeed in doing that. The opposite happened. They led him astray. Lofty though his intentions, he erred. So in other words, he had good intentions, but even if you have good intentions, you can't do these things. No human being, not even Solomon, can allow his convictions to supersede the commandments of the Torah. Solomon's intentions, like his wisdom, were unsurpassed, but not even he had a right to ignore the clear word of God. So I think this is just an interesting way of trying to justify his actions, that it really was intended for good. And then, okay. So when we look at, the commandment of the Torah not to have too many wives, one of the rabbis in the Talmud says, why did the Torah not reveal the reason behind its commandments? I mean, a lot of times commandments don't have reasons, right? It just says you shall not do whatever. Because there are two passages in which the Torah did divulge its reasons, and the greatest of men experienced his downfall through them. The Torah states, you shall not have too many wives so that his heart not turn astray. Now, in this case, there is a reason given for this commandment. And Solomon said, I can have many wives and not turn away. Again, I'm immune to all this stuff. And then the Torah says he shall not have too many horses, that he not return to the people in Egypt. And Solomon says, I can have many horses without returning the people to Egypt. And of course, that's not true either, etc. So in other words, there's a reason for these commandments in the Torah. And I'm sure all of us have probably, I can't think of something very specific right at the moment, but I'm sure all of us have thought, okay, these are the rules, but I'm not gonna get corrupted. So I can break this one, right? It's not gonna really affect my ethical compass. And, you know, the more power you have and the more arrogance you have, the more you think it's not going to affect me. Or if it does, it doesn't have the same effect that it would have on some lesser person, right? So this is the arrogance of humans, but also the arrogance of people in power. Okay, any comments before we go on? No? Okay. Let's go back to our text. Laura, you want to continue?
Sure. Then the Lord raised up an adversary against Saul.
Oh, wait, we're in verse 9. Sorry.
Oh. Then the Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him concerning this matter, that he should not follow other gods, but he did not observe what the Lord had commanded. Therefore, the Lord said to Solomon, since this has been your mind, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes that I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. Yet for the sake of your father David, I will not do it in your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. I will not, however, tear away the entire kingdom. I will give one tribe to your son for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen.
Okay, so now this is going to be the pattern of this whole historical section of Kings, which is that a king will arise and will stray from the course and the country will be punished. I mean, the king will stray, the people will stray, or the people will stray and the king won't stop them or will influence them in a bad way. And over again, this is the Deuteronomic historian. Okay, in other words, it's from the school of Deuteronomy. What's the theology of Deuteronomy? Sorry, Christine.
If you do something bad, bad things will happen to you.
Right, and if you do what God says, good things
you'll
will
have
happen, right?
Nice harvest. Yes.
That is the whole. I mean, it's explicitly said in Deuteronomy, and the whole historical section, which goes through 2 Kings, is going to be that. And of course, the northern kingdom we will see has the worst kings. Why do you think that is?
Probably written by the Southern Kingdom.
Thank you. Yes. The victors are the ones who write history, right? And we know ultimately, I mean, we're not going to get there, I don't think, but in 586, the northern kingdom was wiped away by Assyria, the 10 northern tribes. So even though, you know, a strain of what's written in the Torah is from the northern kingdom, you know, that documentary hypothesis that there are 4 main strains of material, there is the Elohim strain, which is from the north. So there is some remnant of, you know, the north, but certainly the history is written by the victors, which is the kingdom of Judah. And they're pretty annoyed, as you'll see, you know, they're pretty annoyed by what happens in the north in terms of the cult. Aside from the politics, the cult of the Israelite cult is going to be transformed by them as well. They're going to build temples up north, and there's only one place you're allowed to worship Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, which is in Jerusalem. So that's really, really bad. But they're also the ones who were vanquished first. So we're going to constantly see how awful their kings are, as opposed to the wonderful kings in the south. There's a couple of really, really important ones, Hezekiah and Josiah. You know, those guys are like paramount. Now, it just so happens, as we'll see, that the really good kings like Hezekiah and Josiah may be really loyal to God, but they're not the greatest politicians in the sense that their kingdoms suffer a lot. Whereas in the north, Ahab is going to reign for quite a long time. His father is Omri, and that dynasty is going to last for quite some time. They're very successful economically and politically, but hey, anybody know who Ahab married? Jezebel. Yes, Jezebel. How much worse could that be? Anyway, we'll get to that in the next few weeks. The story of Jezebel, poor lady. She just was just had a different religion. That's all. She wasn't a bad person. But she was on the wrong side. Okay, so let's go back to the text and go down to verse 14. You want to keep reading, Lori?
Sure. Then the Lord raised up an adversary against Solomon. Hadad, the Edomite, he was of the royal house in Edom. For when David was destroying Edom and Joab, the commander of the army went up to bury the dead. When? Okay. Of the army to bury the dead, he killed every male in Edom. For Joab.
So you remember that Joab was the general who led David's army. Okay, and Edom is always considered a terrible enemy. It's considered to be the sort of progenitor of Rome, or the representative of Rome, and they hate Rome, obviously. And remember also that Esau is connected to Edom. So now they're going to want to take revenge against him. Now, they want to take revenge for perfectly legitimate reasons, right? All the males were killed by David's army. However, clearly here, it's God who is putting them up to this as a punishment. Because as soon as you do something wrong, God is going to punish you. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
For Joab and all Israel remained there 6 months until he had eliminated every male in Edom. But Hadad, what did you say?
Yeah, Hadad.
Hadad fled to Egypt with some Edomites who were servants of his father. He was a young boy at that time. They set out from Midian and came to Paran. They took people with them from Paran and came to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who gave him a house, assigned him allowance of food, and gave him land. Hadad found great favor in the sight of Pharaoh, so that he gave his sister-in-law for a wife, the sister of Queen Tahpenes. The sister of Tahpenes gave birth by him to his son Genubath, whom Tahpenes weaned in Pharaoh's house. Genubath was in Pharaoh's house among the children of Pharaoh. When Hadad heard in Egypt that David slept with his ancestors and that Joab, the commander of the army, was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Let me depart that I may go to my own country." But Pharaoh said to him, "What do you lack with me that you now seek to go to your own country?" And he said, "No, do not let me go."
Okay, thank you. You know, one thing I forgot to mention before is one of the criticisms of Solomon is that he married these women who were not Jewish. Supposedly, he converted them first. It says, okay, Rambam, which is Maimonides, writes that it's inconceivable that Solomon, the king of Israel, who was known as the beloved of God, would marry a non-Jewish woman without a prior conversion. However, he explains, the general rule was that converts were not accepted in Solomon's time because the prosperity of the kingdom was a magnet for insincere conversions. In other words, they might have only converted because, oh, gee, I'd like to, share in the wealth of that country, and therefore I'm going to convert. And that's not a sincere conversion. So that was one of the problems that he had with these wives. Anyway, okay, going back to this. Yeah. This is all written after the fact, right? So we know the northern kingdom was destroyed. We know there was a split. How do you explain it? How do you explain that Solomon, who's supposed to be the wisest and most wonderful king ever, explain that, somehow after he dies, the kingdom splits? How is that possible? So, and there probably was an attack against him. Oh, and he lost maybe, or he suffered consequences. How is that possible? Well, as I said, it's all done after the fact. So yeah, but you're right about the Edomite. We don't care about who the Edomite marries. But yeah, I mean, plenty of people marry people they're not supposed to marry, but they don't have the consequences that Solomon had. Yeah, Christine?
He would not have been able to convert these women because if the marriage was about alliances with other political entities, and clearly they're of comparable power, because otherwise, they would be concubines rather than wives. And so, the idea that he would have that kind of sway to make them convert is just
obviously he didn't.
It would cause a war.
He obviously didn't succeed very well if he was trying to convert them, since they all led him to, to worship other gods.
Exactly. Right.
So obviously, he didn't really do such a great job converting them. But there really wasn't conversion in those days anyway. But you're right, Lynn. Being an Edomite, who cares what he does? He's just as he's an instrument right now. Right. And in the past, supposedly, because Solomon was, blessed and beloved of God, if there was an enemy, no problem. Now he doesn't have God's protection anymore. And so, and often in these stories, you get some other kingdom or, empire coming to punish the Israelites. It's God sending them. And that's what happens when you don't listen.
Okay. God has different rules for the other people, right? The Edomite can do whatever he wants, even if he is under God's eye coming back to punish Solomon in some way, right? So it seems weird that you're going to hold Solomon for not doing these things, but then you're going to let someone who also doesn't do that thing come and be the righteous attacker against him. The whole thing feels, like you were saying, it's all sort of justifying the past because of what was happening to them in the present, and spinning the narrative so that it fit where the circumstances ended up, rather than necessarily following any kind of logical.
And also, we know damn well that you can follow all of the commandments and still have bad things happen to you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lynn, go ahead, and then Harvey.
I was going to say on that logic there, but the other peoples aren't supposed to be following the same rules as the.
Well, not the Edomites. On the other hand, I'm sure God was not protecting the Edomites.
No, right? I'm just saying that saying that people do the same thing. Well, they're not under the same laws. So
right. But as I said, it's all sort of glossed over to fit a narrative. Right. Okay. Harvey, did you have your hand up?
I had a question. Did they actually have a conversion process back then?
No.
And so it wouldn't have been a big deal anyway. They could have said, oh, you're a Jew now.
Yeah.
And then also the Edomites, weren't they derived from Esau, who was Isaac's son? Yes. So that's kind of a roundabout way of getting back at the Jews again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, you know what? Every single day, it's like Groundhog's Day. These two, my cat and dog, fight in exactly the same way every single day. The cat jumps on the dog, bites his neck. The dog is upset and cries. And it's just every single day. Right now, my dog is doing the activity. He's pulling out everything out of my purse. Now he's got my Excedrin. Okay, just 1 second. Ollie, you know what? That is not the good. You think I starved these animals? Okay. All right. So, any other comments? All right. Let's go back to this. Okay. So we found out about this guy. He's gone off to Egypt, of course. That's not a great thing either, right? Egypt is helping him out. Oh, and now there's going to be another one. Okay. Would you like to do a little more, Lori? Where'd Lori go? Uh-oh, Lori's gone. No, she walked away. All right, does someone else want to pick it up?
Christine has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Christine.
Okay, great. God raised up another adversary against Solomon, Rezon, son of Eliada, who had fled from his master, King Hadadezer of Zobah. He gathered followers around him and became a leader of a marauding band, right, like David, right?
Yep.
After killing by David, they went to Damascus, settled there, and made him king in Damascus. He was an adversary of Israel all the days of Solomon, making trouble as Hadad did. He despised Israel and reigned over Aram. What's Aram?
That's another country around there.
Okay. Jeroboam, son of Nebat, an Ephraimite of Zeredah, a son of Solomon, whose mother's name, what?
A servant, not a son.
Oh, God, my eyes. Whose mother's name was Zeruah, a widow, rebelled against the king.
Now, remember, okay, Ephraimite means he's from the north.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The following was the reason he rebelled against the king. Solomon built the Millo and closed up the gap between the wall of the city of his father David. The man Jeroboam was very able, and when Solomon saw that the young man was industrious, he gave him charge over all the forced labor of the house of Joseph. About that time, where Jeroboam was leaving Israel, the prophet Ahijah, the Shilonite, found him on the road. Ahijah had clothed himself in a new garment. The two of them were alone in the open country. When Ahijah laid hold of the new garment he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. He then said to Jeroboam, "Take for yourself 10 pieces, for thus says the Lord, the God of Israel. See, I am about to tear the kingdom from the hand of Solomon and will give you 10 tribes. One tribe will remain his for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city that I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. This is because he has forsaken me, worshipped Astarte, the goddess of the Sidonians, Shemosh, the god of Moab, and Milcom, the god of the Ammonites, and has not walked in my ways, doing what is right in my sight, and keeping my statutes and my ordinances, as his father David did. Nevertheless, I will not take the whole kingdom away from him, but will make him ruler all the days of his life for the sake of my servant David, whom I chose, and who did keep my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom away from his son and give it to you, that is, the 10 tribes. Yet to his son I will give 1 tribe, so that my servant David may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city where I have chosen to put my name."
Okay, hang on just one sec, since I have to move this, but before I move it, remember that, you may not remember, I just saw a note about it, but Saul tore the cloak from Samuel way back when. And that was an indication that the kingdom would be torn away from him. And also remember that when Saul was out peeing and David was in the cave, he tore a piece of his cloak to kind of indicate, well, I could have killed you, but I didn't. But the tearing of the cloak is some kind of a symbol that your kingdom is going to be torn away from you. And so here we have the 12 pieces, which of course represents the 12 tribes. There's some apparent confusion because there were 2 tribes in the south, Judah and Benjamin, but somehow Benjamin a lot of times gets kind of conflated with Judah. But they're going to be the 10 northern tribes that are going to be, the country of Israel. And then the southern tribe is going to be the country of Judah. All right, so let me move this all the way here. Okay. Verse 37.
Okay. I will take you, and you shall reign over all that your soul desires, and you shall be king over Israel. If you will listen to all that I command you, walk in my ways, and do what is right in my sight by keeping my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, I will be with you and will build you an enduring house as I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. For this reason, I will punish the descendants of David, but not forever. Solomon sought, therefore, to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam promptly fled to Egypt, to King Shishak of Egypt, and remained in Egypt until the death of Solomon. Smart guy. It's like, I'm out of here. Okay. Now
notice this recurring theme of people fleeing to Egypt, right?
Yeah,
as the place where the enemies can kind of regroup.
Now, the rest of the acts of Solomon, all that he did, as well as his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the Acts of Solomon? In the The time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. Solomon slept with his ancestors and was buried in the city of his father David, and his son Rehoboam succeeded him.
So there apparently was some sort of annals of the kings.
Yeah.
Because they keep referring to this, as you'll see. And it's, obviously it's been lost. We don't have those books anymore. By the way, just to make things really, really confusing. So Rehoboam is going to be the successor to Solomon, and Jeroboam is the guy who's going to be the king of the north.
Yeah.
So it's kind of confusing, but there you go. That's the Bible for you.
Well, this also sort of reads like the bum's rush, and he died, I mean, really, it's like there's no elaboration, right? He just like dies and his son takes over.
Well, I guess the thing is, we've made our important point being that, you disobey God. Now, if you're Solomon, the kingdom won't be torn from you during your own lifetime. But if you're anybody else, it will, right? And so it's, what else do we need to say about Solomon, right? We don't want to go into more details about how he built shrines in the high places and shrines to different gods. We already know that. So we've said enough about that. Now on to, the next chapter, right? We don't need, it's interesting though, because the story of David is so intricate, right? We found out about his relationship with several of his wives, right?
Yeah.
The details of, Michal. I mean, this is a good point that you're making. Michal, how, she helped him and all that, and his, ingratitude, he was not very gracious to her after all that. And, she ends up childless and all that. And then the relationship with Abigail, where, she's a very smart woman politically, she's wealthy, and he has a relationship with her for that reason. And Bathsheba and all the intricacies in court about one son wanting to, be the next heir, and someone else, all the intrigues of the palace trying to get the next guy, Solomon, to be the king. It's just a very intricately interesting story. And with Solomon, we have a little bit of detail. We know that he didn't split the baby in half, although he suggested it as a way to get the right woman to fess up to be the mother. And we know that Sheba, but it doesn't have that same intricate, sort of novel-like feel to it. And a lot of the rest, when we get to Jezebel, we'll get a lot more into a story. But otherwise, it's a lot of, this guy does this guy does that, on to the next one. Yeah, he fails, he's punished by God. The next guy comes along. So it's just interesting the way they sort of gave up on that narrative, because it was a good narrative. Mm-hmm. Any other comments before we go on to the next chapter? Okay. So let me get to the chapter. All right. You want to keep reading a little bit?
Sure. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. When Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, heard of it, for he was still in Egypt, where he had fled from King Solomon, then Jeroboam remained in Egypt. And they sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and said to Rehoboam, "Your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the hard service that your father and his heavy yoke that he placed on us, and we will serve you." He said to them, "Go away for 3 days, then come again to me." So the people went away.
Okay, hang on just one sec. So Shechem is in the north. You know what Shechem is today? It's Nablus.
Oh, really? Huh.
Uh-huh.
Huh.
So he's now been made king over all, right? The north and the south, Rehoboam. And so, of course, Jeroboam, his intentions are not completely pure, but he figures, okay, let's give this one try. We're going to go to the guy and tell him, look, we can't keep going the way you've been, doing to us, or Solomon's been doing, taxing us so much and forcing us to work so much, right? Mm-hmm. For all these great building projects. Please do, So he says, let me go consult with some people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then King Rehoboam took counsel with the older men who had attended his father Solomon while he was still alive, saying, "How do you advise me to answer this people?" They answered him, "If you will be a servant to this people today and serve them and speak good words to them when you answer them, then they will be your servants forever." But he disregarded the advice that the older men gave him and consulted with the young men who had grown up with him and now attended him. He said to them, "What do you advise that we answer this people who have said to me, 'Lighten the yoke that your father put on us'?" The young men who had grown up with him said to him, "Thus you should say to the people who spoke to you, 'Your father made our yoke heavy, but you must lighten it for us.' Thus you should say to them, 'My little finger is thicker than my father's loins.'" Huh?
Okay, yes. The way you pause because Alter suggests that might be little finger might really mean penis.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, whereas my father laid on you a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions.
Okay, let's stop for a moment. So he goes to the older people, older, wiser people, and they say, "Yeah, why didn't you listen to them?" Right? That's going to get you loyalty from people if you lighten their burden. But he's a whippersnapper, and he goes up to the other whippersnappers, and they go, just like young, idiotic teenager types, right? We're going to show them. That always works, right? If people feel repressed, you repress them more, and that really works well. That worked with Pharaoh, didn't it? Right? When Pharaoh put more burden on the Israelites or the Hebrews. And all that does is get people want to rebel even more. So it's kind of, interesting, the contrast between the older and the younger.
So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam at the third day, as the king had said, "Come to me again the third day." The king answered the people harshly. He disregarded the advice that the older men had given him and spoke to them according to the advice of the young men. "My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions." So the king did not listen to the people because it was a turn of affairs brought about by the Lord to fulfill his word that the Lord had spoken by Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat.
By the way, Alter says that Rehoboam became king when he was 40. By the way, that Solomon reigned for 40 years, all of that. That's all this idealistic, 40 is some special number. So he was supposedly 40. So the people that he went to consult with, even the younger ones, were not 18. Mm-hmm. But they are referred to as young men, or what verse is that? I want to see how
the young
translates it. He translates, young men.
Yeah.
Probably just to underline their, immature response. Not that they're necessarily young, but certainly the older people have more experience and, probably more wisdom, but who listens to the older generation, right? We don't know anything. Okay, boomer. Okay.
When all Israel saw that the king would not listen to them, the people answered the king, "What share do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel, look now to your own house, O David. Oh, look now to your own house, O David." So Israel went away to their tents. But Rehoboam reigned over the Israelites who were living in the towns of Judah. When King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was taskmaster over the forced labor, all Israel stoned him to death. A subtle hint. King Rehoboam then hurriedly mounted his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel had been in rebellion against the house of David to this day.
So, you send the guy who's the overseer of forced labor, could you find a worse person to be your ambassador? And again, there's been a division from day one. What share do we have in David? David is from the south. Why should the people in the north feel any allegiance to the house of David, right? It lasted for 2 kings. That's it. And again, it really just makes me always think about this country too. Like the South. I mean, one thing is that when you're defeated, you're never too happy, right? So the South was defeated, in this case, the North. And I mean, in our country, it was the South. And there's always this underlying stuff going on. And if you don't handle it right, bang, which is what we're experiencing right now, right? Yes, Jason.
There's a saying that the South surrendered, but they never stopped fighting.
There you go. It's true. It's true, right? There's this rift that just never gets healed. I mean, maybe it could have gotten healed in some way, but I mean, there certainly were compromises made to make the South happy, but it wasn't enough. Christine,
can I tell a little story about that?
A little story.
The Civil War. When I was in second grade, my mother sent us to Catholic school in Virginia in Arlington, Virginia, because they were the only desegregated schools at the time. And so the teacher was telling us to take out a sheet of manila paper, which we all called vanilla paper, and to draw a picture of the Civil War. Well, I've never heard that term before because we were in Virginia. It was always the war between the states. Okay, so I heard Civil War, so I drew a picture of war in silver crayons, and
that's great.
And that was my introduction to the Civil War.
And you know what? Given the fact that so-called critical race theory can't be taught in schools at this point in many places, that's probably how it would be drawn again, right? Does history repeat itself? Yeah.
Oh, please, tiresomely. And it's not only as farce, as Mark said, but it's like a really boring version of the same old stuff.
Yeah.
It's not even farce.
All right, so let's keep on. Let me move this down. Okay, you want to keep going?
When all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and called him to the assembly and made him king over all Israel. There was no one who followed the house of David except the tribe of Judah alone. When Jeroboam came to Jerusalem,
Rehoboam.
I meant Rehoboam, yeah. Sorry.
It's very confusing.
I know, there are too many came to Jerusalem. He assembled all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. Oh, yay, they came back. 180,000 chosen troops to fight against the house of Israel, to restore the kingdom of Rehoboam, son of Solomon. But the word of God came to Shemaiah, the man of God. Say to King Rehoboam of Judah, son of Solomon, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin, to the rest of the people, thus says the Lord, you shall not go up or fight against your kindred, the people of Israel. Let everyone go home, for this thing is from me. So they heeded the word of the Lord and went home again, according to the word of the Lord. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, and resided there. He went out from there and built Penuel. Then Jeroboam said to himself, now the kingdom may well revert to the house of David. If this people continues to go up to offer sacrifices in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, the heart of this people will turn again to their master, King Rehoboam of Judah. They will kill me and return to King Rehoboam of Judah. So the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. Oh, that's a nice bargaining.
There we go.
Yeah, he said to the people, you have gone up to Jerusalem long enough. Here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. He set one in Bethel and the other he put in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one in Bethel and before the other as far as Dan. He also made houses on high places and appointed priests from among all the people who were not Levites. Jeroboam appointed a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the festival that was in Judah, and he offered sacrifices on the altar. So he did in Bethel sacrificing the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places that he had made. He went up to the altar that he had made in Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th month. In the month that he had selected on his own, he appointed a festival for the people of Israel, and he went up to the altar to offer incense.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, he's establishing a separate cultic center or two centers. And it is not just a religious reason, but it's also a political reason. He's afraid that if people continue to sacrifice in Jerusalem, they're going to end up possibly being more loyal to the Judah country, kingdom, than they will be to his kingdom in the north. So this is a way to keep people, from being influenced by the south. Now, of course, the calves. So calves, golden calves like that were often understood as mounts for the gods. So they're not necessarily in and of themselves idols, right? They're supposed to be what the god is going to be riding on. However, of course, it is very, very closely connected to the golden calf in the desert that the Israelites built. And note that when he says, here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. That's exactly what Aaron says with the golden calf. Okay. So there's a very, very conscious connection between the two. Now, there is at least one rabbi, I'm sure there are many others, but he made a presentation about this, who believes that actually the whole golden calf episode and the whole thing about the exodus from Egypt never happened, that it's really about this. It was sort of retrojected into the past. That the exodus is this exodus of people moving to the north. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Certainly, the golden calf incident itself may have been put in later as a way to make this guy look bad. Because Jeroboam is supposed to be a really bad guy, right? Because look what he does. He not only, Deuteronomy says there's only one place to worship God, and that's in Jerusalem. This one has two other places, Dan and Bethel, and he also builds, high place shrines as well to the various local gods or whatever. So he is supposed to be really, really bad, Jeroboam. Why Jeroboam is also the size of a wine bottle, I don't know. That happened.
I did wonder that.
Jeremiah too, but anyway. Okay, so let's, does anybody have anything they want to comment on? Yes, so the golden calf thing is, again, very, very connected in these two stories. And which came first, who knows? But obviously, there's an artificial thing going on here. Either they did it in the desert and then it was reproduced here as a way to comment on him, or the other way around. Or neither. It was put in, both of them were put in. We don't know. But you have to always remember to read stories in the Bible against other stories in the Bible. There's a lot of intertextuality. Because, saying, here are your gods, O Israel. I mean, that's what Aaron says. So there's no way that that's not an echo of that, among many other things. Okay. So remember, it says, Jeroboam appointed a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month. Okay. You know what that is? It's Sukkot, except Sukkot is supposed to be in the 7th month. Right? Remember that, the calendar in the Bible is different from the calendar we have today. And so Rosh Hashanah happens in the 7th month of what would be the 7th month in this. So the 15th is Sukkot, right? Because first you have Rosh Hashanah, then you have Yom Kippur, and then you have Sukkot. Okay. Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the 7th month. Yom Kippur is the 10th. Sukkot is the 15th. But it's the 8th month. So not only has he built these two shrines, for people to go worship at, he's also creating his own calendar. Because that is not the traditional calendar for the biblical period. Okay, sorry about that.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Just I mean, maybe this is too obvious, but I'm guessing it's because people did not travel far to the temple except a couple times a year, right? So he had to make it so that they couldn't go to both, or he would have wanted them to not be able to go to both places. So they had to go to his instead of the one in Jerusalem, right?
Good point. Good point. That's possibly why he did that. Yeah. But he's trying to really create a break with the Southern Kingdom in many different ways. Yeah.
Because even if it was a month apart, you probably couldn't take your sacrifices to Jerusalem and then go to the other one too, right? I mean, that would have been...
Why would you want to sacrifice twice?
Yeah.
Because then that means you're getting rid of your own stuff, right? Even if you're making God really, really happy. Yes.
He's also, he's rejecting the notion that the priesthood is closely related to the Levites.
Yeah, he also, that's another thing. He appoints.
We're doing our own priestly group.
Right. He appoints priests who are not part of the Levites, which is much, much later what the Maccabees are going to do too. They're going to have, or the Hasmonean dynasty, they're going to appoint a high priest who's not from the Aaronite line. So, yeah. Why don't you start again?
Okay. A man of God came out of Judah by the word of the Lord to Bethel, while Jeroboam was standing by the altar to offer incense. And he cried out against the altar by the word of the Lord and said, O altar, altar, thus says the Lord, a son shall be born to the house of David, Josiah by name, and he shall sacrifice on you the priests of high places who offer incense on you, and human bones shall be burned on you. He gave a sign the same day, saying, this is the sign that the Lord has spoken. The altar shall be torn down, and the ashes that are on it shall be poured out. When the king heard what the God of man cried out against the altar at Bethel, the altar, Jeroboam stretched out his hand from the altar, saying, seize him. But the hand that he stretched out against him withered, so that he could not draw it back himself. The altar was also torn down, and the ashes poured out from the altar, according to the sign that the man of God had given by the word of the Lord. The king said to the man of God, entreat now in favor of the Lord your God, and pray for me, so that my hand may be restored to you. So the man of God entreated the Lord, and the king's hand was restored to him and became as it was before. Then the king said to the man of God, come home with me and dine, and I will give you a gift. But the man of God said to the king, if you give me half your kingdom, I will not go with you, nor will I eat food or drink water in this place. For thus I was commanded by the word of the Lord. You shall not eat food or drink water or return by the way that you came. So he went another way and did not return by the way that he had come to Bethel.
Okay, so first of all, this at the beginning when it says, oh, altar, altar, that is not a typical way of beginning a prophetic address. And what alter the writer, not alter the altar, suggests is that this is a way to point out or emphasize the illegitimacy of this altar. Altar. Josiah, again, is he's like the, model king, which will come up in much later in 2 Kings. And then the reason that Robert Alter suggests that they don't sit down and eat together, that the prophet says, I can't do this. God said no, is that somehow eating together is indicating a certain intimacy, a certain acceptance, and or even a covenant between them, and he doesn't want to establish that. Okay, any other thoughts about this? Yeah. Well, Jason.
I get a little confused sometimes with prophecy, because here he comes and he says, God has said these things will happen. This altar will have human bones burned on it, right? And then they tear it down. So the prophecy then can't come true, or they would have to rebuild it. Like, there's a lot of times when it sounds like the prophecy is spoken as if it's a done deal, it's a fact, but then it's always kind of with this, unless you, right?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, he names a person, right? This person, Josiah, is going to come and do this, right? And then, so it's, I mean, I don't know that we're going to get later to any follow-up on this, but I mean, is there later a Josiah? Do they burn?
Oh, that's
you know what I mean? Like, or did he just create this prophecy idea that this is an alternate history that'll occur if you don't do it? I don't know that there's answers to all these things, but it just struck me as very specifically detailed. And then for it not to happen would be strange, right? I mean, a prophecy is supposed to be a prophecy, right?
I'll read you Walter's note on that. Josiah was king of Judah 3 centuries after the time of the story, which thus was surely composed no earlier than the late 7th century BCE. The continuation of the story appears in 2 Kings 23, where Josiah is reported to have undertaken a sweeping campaign to destroy idols and the apparatus of pagan worship. In the course of that campaign, he slaughters the idolatrous priests and also exhumes bones from graves and burns them on the altar of Bethel in order to make it forever ritually impure. So I guess they don't, it's like, what's his name? The playwright, Chekhov. If you have a gun early in the play, it has to go off at some point, right? So you have to wait till another book to get to the conclusion of this story.
So the altar was either rebuilt or they didn't really tear it down there. I guess I got confused about that, but it's okay. I mean, it obviously still existed later, 3 centuries later, if they did all that. So, well, they certainly had time to rebuild.
Yes, I mean, given that Bethel is the center of worship, they're going to have an altar there. So even if he destroys this one, they're going to build another one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But the gun does go off.
But it's also end running the prophecy. Well, if we tear down the altar, the prophecy can't come true. So,
and little do you know that
kill the messenger. And
there are always ways around it, even though you think, oh no, I escaped it. No, you didn't. Yeah, but you do have to wait quite a while to see that is in fact what's going to happen. But that's a good question. Okay, let's go back to. All right. Now there's another prophet, lots of prophets. We are in the section of the Tanakh called Nevi'im, which is prophets. There are lots of them running around here.
Now there lived an old prophet in Bethel. One of his sons came and told him that the man of God had done that day in Bethel. The words also that he had spoken to the king, they told to their father. Their father said to them, which way did he go? And his son showed him the way that the man of God who came from Judah had gone. Then he said to his sons, saddle a donkey for me. So they saddled a donkey for him and he mounted it. He went after the man of God and found him sitting under an oak tree. He said to him, are you the man of God who came from Judah? He answered, I am. Then he said to him, come home with me and eat some food. But he said, I cannot return with you or go in with you, nor will I eat food or drink with you in this place. For it was said to me by the word of the Lord, you shall not eat food or drink water there, or return by the way that you came. Then the other said to him, I am also a prophet as you are, and an angel spoke to me by the word of the Lord. Bring him back with you into your house, that he may eat food and drink water. But he was deceiving him. Then the man of God went back with him and ate food and drank water in his house.
Okay, so this new prophet or old prophet is lying, right? He did not get this word from God. He's sort of tricking this other guy into eating with him. And so what do you think is going to happen to him? He's disobeying God's command, right? So you can just imagine that gun's going to go off too. All right. Do you want to keep going? Or do you want Christine to take?
Sure, I can go one more.
Okay. How are you feeling, by the way?
Crummy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. But thank you for reading.
Still have the sore throat. As they were sitting at the table, the word of the Lord came to the prophet who had brought him back. And he cried out to the man of God who came from Judah. Thus says the Lord, because you have disobeyed the words of the Lord and have not kept the commandment that the Lord your God commanded you, but have come back and have eaten food and drunk water in the place of which he said to you, eat no food and drink no water. Your body shall not come to your ancestral tomb. After the man of God had eaten food and had drunk, they saddled for him a donkey belonging to the prophet who had brought him back. Then as he went away, a lion met him on the road and killed him. His body was thrown in the road, and the donkey stood beside it. The lion also stood beside the body. People passed by and saw the body thrown in the road with the lion standing by the body, and they came and told it in the town where the old prophet lived.
Okay, so apparently there were lions in that period that roamed around. So it's not, weird that there's a lion, although obviously this one was sent by God. And what Alter notes about body is apparently in the Hebrew is really carcass. It's not using the word body so much as carcass to kind of indicate how badly damaged the body was. So this is what happens when you don't listen to God.
Is this the Lion of Judah?
Well, the lion is the representative of the tribe of Judah.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe it's because there were lots of lions roaming around.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were, but
someone told me that near UCR, they saw a mountain lion.
Yes, I saw one once. I mean, it was 20 years.
Watch out. You better listen to God or one's going to attack you.
Hey.
Luckily, some of you don't live near UCR.
Yeah, right. It was pretty scary. They locked down the building for a while.
It's not bad enough that we have coyotes here all the time, but mountain lions and all kinds of. Oh, there's also a fox in this neighborhood, apparently.
I once saw 5 rattlesnakes in the parking lot up by the Center for Ideas and Society.
Oh,
so it's a shocker. It's like,
yeah. Well, nature exists and is going to take its revenge, which it already has.
Yeah, they all need food and someplace to go for water also.
Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. And
especially
after all,
if you
we're on
disobey
their
God.
turf,
Yes. But especially if you disobey God, then watch out, right? I mean, they're coming for you. Okay, let's see. Are we? Okay, let's finish this chapter.
When the prophet who had brought him back from the Lord said to him, "It is the man of God who disobeyed the word of the Lord. Therefore, the Lord has given him to the lion, which has torn him and killed him according to the word that the Lord spoke to him." Then he said to his sons, "Saddle a donkey for me." So they saddled one, and he went and found the body thrown in the road with the donkey and the lion standing beside it. The lion had not eaten the body or attacked the donkey. The prophet took up the body of the man of God, laid it on the donkey, and brought it back to the city to mourn and to bury him. He laid the body in his own grave, and they mourned over him, saying, "Alas, my brother." After he had buried him, he said to his sons, "When I die, bury me in the grave in which the man of God is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones. For the saying that he proclaimed by the word of the Lord against the altar in Bethel and against all the houses of high places that there are in the cities of Samaria shall surely come to pass."
So let me just interrupt you 1 second. So this prophet wants to make sure that he's going to be buried in the grave because he doesn't want to be burnt on his bones being burnt on the altar. And he's also trying to prevent this other guy for whom he is responsible by his lie. The guy got eaten ripped by a lion. So he's making sure that he's buried properly as well, because he doesn't want either one of them to end up with that prophecy. The bones are going to be burnt on the altar, which will happen later. Okay, let's finish it.
Even after this event, Jeroboam did not turn from his evil way, but made priests for the high places again from among all the people. Any who wanted to be priests, he consecrated for the high places. This matter became the sin to the house of Jeroboam, so as to cut it off and to destroy it from the face of the earth.
Okay, so again, Jeroboam, bad guy, really bad guy. Building altars on high places, very bad. So he's one of the, sort of archetypical people that you just, do not want to have anything to do with. Unlike Josiah, who's the opposite. Okay, let's do a little bit of, go ahead, Christine.
Is there some kind of condemnation of the king appointing priests in that the priests are supposed to be taken,
I mean, just what it said, that, he was unrepentant in doing all these terrible things, inclling naming priests who are not Levites. He
consecrates all the priests, but
you want to be a priest, go right ahead.
Yeah, I know, but that's not how were the priests consecrated usually?
Well, it's supposed
generally, to be. Isn't it true that priests, it passed down from father to son?
Right.
And
the Levites.
When you talk about the
Kohanim,
it's not someone that comes in, it's someone that is the son.
Correct.
Yeah. So, correct. That's the tradition, but of course, these people didn't always follow tradition.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly right. So, there is a consecration ceremony that's in the book of Leviticus. You put blood on the forehead and the thumb and the toe, and and you don't bring strange fire, otherwise you get zapped too, like the sons of Aaron. But there's a whole consecration ritual, but you first have to be the right person, which is a Levite. And if you're not, then you're illegitimate.
Okay.
And given the fact that that's what Jeroboam did, and we condemn Jeroboam, therefore, he is also doing something that is unacceptable.
Who are the Kohanim? Aren't they the priests?
Yes.
Also?
Yeah. Well, the Kohanim, they're the, the high priests, the Aaronites are the high priests, and the Levites are sort of the everyday, the ones who sweep up the ashes and do that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, let's just do a little. Yeah, I'm sorry. Someone have something? Okay.
I was just thanking Ruth.
Oh, okay. So let's do a little bit of the next chapter. Okay. You want to pick it up, Christine?
At that time, Abijah, the son of Jeroboam, fell sick. Jeroboam said to his wife, "Go, disguise yourself so that it will not be known that you are the wife of Jeroboam, and go to Shiloh, for the prophet Ahijah is there, who said of me that I should be king over this people. Take with you 10 loaves, some cakes, and a jar of honey, and go to him. He will tell you what shall happen to the child." Jeroboam's wife did so. So she set out and went to Shiloh and came to the house of Ahijah. Now Ahijah could not see, for his eyes were dim because of his age. But the Lord said to Ahijah, "The wife of Jeroboam is coming to inquire of you." It's always handy to have God telling you what's going on. Inquire of you concerning her son, for he is sick. Thus and thus you shall say to her when she comes. She will pretend to be another woman.
So just one sec. So, this is another parallel. Remember what happened when David had his illegitimate affair with Bathsheba? Mm-hmm. What happened to the baby? The baby died, right? So here you've got this bad guy, and now his son is having to pay the price. He's sick. Yeah. And, of course, Jeroboam's wife doesn't need to disguise herself because the guy's already blind, not to mention the fact that God is going to, bat on her. But, yeah. Now, the fact that he's, his eyes are dim because of his age is an indication that it's been a long time since we've heard from this guy. And, that Jeroboam was in touch with him. Okay.
But when Ahijah heard the sound of her feet as she came in at the door, he said, "Come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why do you pretend to be another? For I am charged with heavy tidings for you. Go, tell Jeroboam, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, because I exalted you from among the people, made you leader over my people Israel, and tore the kingdom away from the house of David to give to you. Yet you have not been like my servant David, who kept my commandments and followed me with all his heart, doing only that which was right in my sight. But you have done evil above all those who were before you, and have gone and made yourself other gods and cast images, provoking me to anger, and have thrust me behind your back. Therefore, I will bring evil upon the house of Jeroboam. I will cut off from Jeroboam every male, both bond and free in Israel, and will consume the house of Jeroboam just as one burns up dung until it is all gone. Well, that's vivid. Anyone belonging to Jeroboam who dies in the city, the dogs shall eat, and anyone who dies in the open country, the birds of the air shall eat, for the Lord has spoken. Therefore, set out, go to your house. When your feet enter the city, the child shall die. All Israel shall mourn for him and bury him, for he alone of Jeroboam's family shall come to the grave, because in him there is found something pleasing to the Lord, the God of Israel, in the house of Jeroboam. Moreover, the Lord will raise up for himself a king over Israel, who shall cut off the house of Jeroboam today, even right now.
Okay, so let's stop there. I want to point out a couple of things. So in verse 7, go tell Jeroboam, because I exalted you from the people, made you leader. Now, Robert Alter translates the word leader as prince, which is a denigration, right? Because he's the king, not a prince. And even if you translate it just as leader, I mean, he's not being told that he's the king. Okay, so that's one thing. Oh, oopsie. What is happening here? Why is it not going back?
It's Elon Musk.
Okay, it's all right. Then the other interesting thing is verse 10. This is how Robert Alter translates that. Therefore, I'm going to bring evil on the house of Jeroboam, and I will cut off from Jeroboam every pisser against the wall, which is much more, graphic than to say every male. Obviously, every pisser against the wall is going to be a male, but that's how it's characterized by Robert Alter, and I imagine that's closer to the original. And that is also what King David had said about Nabal. Remember him? He was the husband of Abigail, and David was running a protection racket, and Nabal would not pay up, and he threatens to do that to him. I will, destroy every pisser against the wall. Then, of course, the idea that the dogs are going to eat the leftovers of all these people is really, a degradation, a violation of the sanctity of the body, because obviously leaving bodies to scavengers, the body is something that, belongs to God, is created by God. And to do that to it is very, very disrespectful, obviously. Yeah. And then when he says, as soon as your feet come to town, is an echo of her footsteps that he was hearing as she came to talk to him. Mm-hmm. And I guess the question is why did she disguise herself? And he doesn't mention anything about that. But I imagine that if the prophet knew that it was the queen coming to ask, maybe the prophet would be less inclined to give the truth. I don't know. Or who knows? Maybe there's some other reason, but it's not explained why he's supposed to.
Well, the prophet may not know that she's coming, although he does. But if she's not disguised, everybody else in town knows that she's going there.
That could be it too.
That could be a problem.
Yeah. In any event, somebody has something in the chat. Let's see if that's the question. Oh. Jane says she's sorry she couldn't participate, but she can't get audio or visual on her Zoom.
Oh, right.
Okay, well, we're sorry too, Jane.
Yeah.
So punishment for Jeroboam is not only that he's not going to really have, a dynasty, that the kingdom is going to be torn away from him, but also that his kid's going to die, just like, David's kid died. And unfortunately, the sins of the fathers are visited upon the children.
But he's basically saying, well, at least your kid can be buried,
Small comfort, yes. At least he's not going to be eaten by a dog or a lion.
Or buzzards.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to stop here just because if we start embarking on more, we won't have time to talk about it. But let me just double check when our next meeting is. Okay, November 12th. So why don't we do this? Why don't we plan to, I mean, for those who want to come in person, we'll meet in the Beit Midrash. And those who cannot come or would rather not come, we will, have my computer and we can have a discussion over Zoom anyway and see how that works. We may go back to doing this. It depends on how it works. Because, when we have services with 10 people showing up and most of the people on Zoom, that's not ideal either. So let's see what we can do. Okay. So I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. I hope you feel better, both Christine and Lori, for different reasons.
Being around all of you always makes me feel better.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Rabbi and everyone, Christine and Lori, all of you and of course, Jason, appreciate everyone's comments.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.